I actually bought a handful of these soy scented candles, and I wanted to take some pictures to demonstrate what different pictures look like. Now, I will say that I don't think any of these pictures are terrible. But what I did here is I took the candle, put it on my kitchen table, and took a photo of it. And this isn't a bad photo, I don't think, right? But what most of us don't realize is that most of the lights that we have in our house are usually what we call a warm white light, which means the light is slightly yellowed. It's just easier on our eyes. It's not as harsh. It's not as bright. And so most homes have this warm white light. And what ends up happening is it gives it this kind of warm look. On top of that, because I have it on my kitchen table, which is brown here, that also gives it this brownish tinge to it, right? And especially if you have things that are colorful or things that are artwork or shirts, what you want is a really good, accurate representation of what that looks like. And you don't want it yellowed or darker or browner or redder than it needs to be. And so, what I would recommend here is one, putting it on a white background, whether it's just a white sheet that you lay out over your table or a bed sheet or whatever, but having a white background, and then also either finding bright white light. Sometimes a lamp or a spotlight might have it, or if you can just have natural light streaming in from a window or a sliding glass door or something like that to illuminate it, that'll give you a much more accurate picture. So what I did here was I took it into another room, just put down a white tablecloth, turned on a lamp that I have with a bright white bulb, and you can see here the big difference. If I look at this, the previous picture where it's brown and reddish, and now I put a white background on it with a bright white light, you can see how much different it looks. Now, I'm not saying in this particular item, you would say, hey, that looks a lot different to me. But what this does is it gives people a little bit more accurate representation. Remember, they're buying this sight unseen. They're trusting your pictures. And so you want it to look as accurate as possible, especially with things with color. Now, here is something that they don't necessarily recommend, but I actually don't have a problem with it. They do recommend the white background and the bright white light. But if you can add a photo that stages it, I don't think that's a problem. Sometimes people want to see what that piece of decor looks like in their home. Or I just took this candle, and in this case, found a stage photo where it's on the table with nice country chic surrounding. And I think it looks good. Now, I would not take all staged photos. Like, you really want some accurate photos. But if you're really trying to give people an idea of how big it is and what it'll look like in their home environment, a single stage photo, I think, can be pretty powerful. So I know that they want white photos, really well lit. And I would definitely take most of these, especially when you're trying to show the detail in it. But adding a stage photo, I think, can be nice. It can help people be a little more imaginative about what they're going to use it for. Now, here's an iPhone that I ended up selling, and I wanted to show you, as I talked about that laptop a little earlier that had a little damage. I took this particular photo in my eBay listing specifically because you can see it has some scratches, some dents right there on the corner. And I wanted to take a picture of it. I put it in my description. I'm circling it here. Sometimes people will take a picture of it and then actually use a photo program to circle the damage just to make sure that they're pointing it out, because sometimes it's not really easy to photograph, especially if the item is dark. But this is something that I wanted to be really clear by the time the buyer got it, that this was an issue with it. You don't want the return. Not only just good photos showing all of the angles of the item, but also any damage that it might have. Now, the other thing that you can do on eBay auctions is add up to 12 photos. And for a lot of items, you probably don't need 12 photos. For simple things like, let's say you're selling a vintage mug, right? You probably don't need more than a few photos of it. But that allows you now to take not only photos in different light, but also to add a stage photo and whatnot. I will say, though, if you take a bunch of photos, you can reorder them or order them in any way you want. And it's really mostly important to have that first photo be your key photo, because that's the one that's going to show up in search results. If I type in vintage mug, that's the one that's going to show up there in those search results. And so you really want your best photo to be your first photo, that photo that you want everyone to look at and decide if they're going to click into your auction or not. Now, my other pro tip here is that I find when I'm listing things on eBay, it's easiest to start on the computer. So I usually go to the eBay website. I type in all the description of everything that I'm listing. In this case, if it's a scented candle, I put in the description. I tell them what's wrong with it or whatever, damage, warranty, does it have the boxes or not? Is it in like new condition or whatever it might be? But before I submit it, right, instead of listing the item, and it'll give you some buttons at the bottom, and this is a screenshot of them. Do you list the item? Do you want to preview that listing, or do I want to save it as a draft? And what I will do is I will save as a draft, because at this point, I still will need to add pictures to it. So I just put all the information into the listing and then I save it as a draft. Then I grab my iPhone and I take photos of the item just with the onboard camera. And then I open up the app on my iPhone, find that draft listing, and then add my photos directly to it. So this saves me from having to take photos and transfer them to my computer and then upload them through my browser. So this is just my little pro tip that I will probably type out if I'm going to sell 3 or 4 things, type out all the listings and all the text that goes with it on my web browser on my computer. And then I will take all the photos with the camera and then upload them through the app. So hopefully that will save you a little time when you're putting some listings together.